The following was recorded in 1960 with Queen Alexandra, who was born in 1844 and died in 1925. This is an edited version, and the medium was Leslie Flint. In 1863, Princess Alexandra of Denmark married Prince Edward of Great Britain, and she became Princess of Wales. In 1901, after the death of Queen Victoria, Edward became King Edward VII, and Alexandra became Queen. Alexandra. I have never been able to speak before in this fashion, but I have often desired to do so. I am here with many who, like myself, still take a great interest in the affairs of this country, indeed with the whole world. I am Queen Alexandra, but I should say I was, because I am no longer in that capacity. Over here we are without title. We are known here for ourselves, as we are by our nature and our character, not because of our position when on earth. In my life, I was able to do a certain amount for the good of the world, but I realize that if one is to serve humanity and bring about peace and tranquility of spirit and a harmony between nations and people, we must look internationally rather than nationally. The days have gone when one can put oneself or one's own country first. I have come to the conclusion that we must have an international spirit. We must break down the barriers that stand between peoples and nations. We must remember now that science has brought together all the peoples as if they were under one roof. There is no distance anymore. Man is living upon each other's doorstep. You can no longer afford to have these barriers that man has built up through the centuries of time. We must learn how to live together in peace, realizing the consequences of war, realizing that now there is no escape for anyone. Those ideas of the past, when we felt that we could live securely in our fortress island, those days have gone forever. There are no barriers or wall of protection. The sea no longer protects this island. Man has advanced scientifically to such a degree that he has made life very difficult. And since there is so much fear in the world, one must find the way to eradicate it. One must have faith and trust and see the nations of the world united in harmony and peace. In realizing the consequences of war in itself, you would have thought would have been sufficient to have prevented any nation or nations thinking along the old lines. And yet there are still those in your world who have not learned the lessons of the past. Wars beget wars. Hatred begets hatred. Intolerance begets intolerance. We must find the solution to these things and make man everywhere conscious of his inheritance, the inheritance which is by nature his very own. That you are all one, irrespective of class or creed or colour or language. No longer can one think in the terms of empires. Today, you must think in terms of harmony among all peoples, among all nations. It seems to me that you must now consider yourself a member of every nation, of every race. There are no barriers left, only what man, in ignorance and of foolishness, makes within himself. You have a wonderful opportunity to form a new conception and way of life. I feel sure that this fear that rests so strongly upon nations will give way to something which will be very wonderful. I feel within myself that this realization that war is now impossible, for if it were to be, it would be the destruction of all that you know and cherish. I think that this realization of atomic power will in the end bring all men together, and fear will be eradicated and love and harmony will prevail. There are many difficulties, but they can be overcome. We would like to see a universal language. If that could be brought into being, it would be a tremendous step in the right direction. I do hope that can be brought into being. My life here has been one of constant change. I have gained knowledge and experience, so I've found myself in different environments according to my progression. And during that period of time which I've been here, I've seen many aspects of time, many changes, many peoples who have in themselves been responsible for much of my education, much of my experience and development. One goes through various phases, various spheres, according to one's development when one has left Earth. Fortunately, although I had no knowledge of life after death, I had a great inner consciousness and realization that life did continue. And when I came here, it was not as if I were in a life that was so strange as perhaps it might have been to some. To me, it was not unfamiliar, and I realized too that during my so-called sleep state when on earth, I had oftentimes travelled into the realm of spirit, and foreseen many of the peoples and places which I should eventually meet and inherit in consequences of the transition called death. I have seen many great souls whom I knew when on earth, who had passed before me, and they often have been of great help to me in guiding me and taken me to various spheres and places. I have gone through many schools of education and learned many things, and I am now able to teach. I have, for some considerable time, as you term time, visited lower spheres to teach those who are less fortunate, to give them an insight into a way of life they may develop themselves and lift themselves out of the darkness in which they exist, the darkness of their own minds. Everything here is a matter of degree and development of mind and of spirit, and the realization that comes that one can progress, and that the way to progress is through learning and experiencing and putting into practice the things that you have gained in knowledge. I've done a great deal in that direction, and I've been able to assist many earthbound souls who were on lower spheres here, undeveloped and unprogressed. Those that I have found most difficult have been those who seem to have clung desperately to old religious beliefs and fixed ideas. Those whose minds are more open, more receptive, are much easier to help and to give knowledge to and develop. But those whose minds are closed with a very strong narrow conception of religion particularly, I have found most difficult. In fact, it is extraordinary the attitude that some of these souls doubt. There are large groups of souls entirely within their own mind in which they consider that they are the only ones who exist on this sphere of existence. They are waiting for the great resurrection day when they shall return to earth and inherit the kingdom of God upon earth. They have this narrow conception that they are in a suspension of time in which they will reform on earth in their physical bodies. It is very difficult to make them change their outlook and way of life. I would not say they are unhappy, but they are living in such a restricted, narrow, confined space and condition of mind that we have great difficulty in having any effect in reaching them. They are the most difficult. When I passed over, I vividly remember awakening in a room which was very reminiscent of a room that I've been fond of many years previously in my earthly existence. It seemed to be an exact replica. The colourings, the materials, the furnishings, and everything about it was a perfect reproduction, so much so that I did not realise at first that I had passed on at all. I remember the view from the window with the beautiful green grass, lawn and terrace, and at the bottom, far in the distance, the river. It was the spot which I had been most fond of. In this room, on my awakening, were many of my relations and friends that I had known. It was a reception. It was a great joy to meet all these friends and souls that had meant so much to me in my earthly life, and to feel the peace and realization that it was an environment in the very room in which I was most happy. It was a room that had given me great joy and pleasure many years previously. I have now realized that I was most fortunate in my passing, that I should have been so blessed. I've oftentimes turned over in my mind many of the things and happenings of earth. I've tried often to realize why I should have been most fortunate. I realized perhaps in a narrow way I endeavored to do what I could do to help. But it's an extraordinary thing when one is attached as I was to the family that is called the service, and has to take upon itself the responsibility of the crown. One is, in a sense, doing work in a narrow field. Although one may serve here and there, one may be called upon to do this or that duty. To some extent, you are doing things not exactly automatically, but you are doing them because it is your duty, and because it is important in the state's sense, but one feels that there are things one might have liked to have done, but one was not able to do. If one were to have endeavoured to do certain things, it would have caused comment in certain quarters and been resented. When I was staying in a certain place, certain things would be brought to my attention, not by these around me and about me in my position, but by accident, not by design, and I would be appalled at certain things I had witnessed, particularly among the poor. Poverty was something which affected me very much, and yet I felt so helpless, and in a small way I did try. Particularly in my day, it was extremely difficult for a person in my position to do very much for the poor. I was ever conscious of the poor and ever wanting to help them, and it was one of the greatest disappointments in my life that I felt that a person in my position and what many people considered power could do nothing. I think it was one of the greatest disappointments of my life that I could do so little for those who needed so much. Poverty worried me terribly. It gave me great pain, and there was so much in my day. I was used to the pomp and ceremony and the pleasanter side of life. Everything was made as nice as one could possibly hope, and yet I was ever conscious of the poverty and endeavoured to help in the hospitals too. Over here, I take great interest in mental illness, which is a great deal of the cause of the unhappiness of the world, in your world I mean, and to a great extent our world too. Much of the trouble here, among those less developed, is the mental condition. That a great deal of the world troubles, in illness and in other ways, is due to the mind. If only we can reach the minds of people and change their outlook and their attitude, and that is what we are constantly trying to do. We are trying to reach the minds of humanity, whatever they may be, irrespective of their condition in life. Whatever their nationality, we are constantly working upon the minds of peoples, especially those in high places who hold the destiny of nations in their hands. We are striving to instill peace and the things that are of God, that they may come together in the future and save the world from destruction. This, I am convinced, shall be done, and I feel sure that man will find a new path and a way of life where he can work in harmony and in love, nation with nation, people with peoples, and God's will can be brought into being. We are striving desperately to do all in our power to help. I have met all members of our family, and perhaps at some future time others may be able to speak to you. I have long desired to come and speak, and I should have to come again. I must go. This is all that really matters, that we continue to serve and to help all mankind, no longer restricted in any way to conform to politics or religion. We are free to speak and to act completely and absolutely as children, as we are indeed of one's God, endeavouring to serve all of his children all the world over, freedom of spirit, and to serve all the nations of the earth. We are now one great family. Bless you, my friends.